Some say he made an inescapable labyrinth with just a few magic rocks. Some say he thwarted an enemy 100,000 strong by busking. Some say he ended a man's career in the world's first rap battle. All we know is he's called Zhuge Liang or Kongming, and he grew up a little bit like Luke Skywalker, a lonely teen who also fought against a big, powerful empire, and was also said to possess magical powers. In part 2 of his story, we'll get into the most incredible of his legends to sort out what's fact, what's fiction, and what's just freaking awesome. So, if you missed out on part 1 up here, or just haven't heard of him, here's a quick TLDR to get you up to speed on who this guy is and why he's such a big deal in Chinese history. To put it simply, he's a guy from the Three Kingdoms period, Sangguo of Chinese history. And most people hear about him from either the de facto history written immediately after it happened, the records of the Three Kingdoms, Sangguo Zhi, and the embellished novelization that was written over 1,000 years later, the romance of the Three Kingdoms, Sangguo Yanyi. There are a lot of discrepancies between the two works, and the official stories are not nearly as spicy as the novel's versions. But, true or not, some of those stories are really good, and a lot of them involve Kongming. So today, we'll continue going over some of his greatest hits and try to set the record straight. So last time we ended the story in 208 AD, after the Battle of Red Cliffs, where he big-brained his enemy, the massively powerful warlord Cao Cao, to give him free ammo, and then went all God of Thunder and called upon a magical wind to help his BFF Liu Bei and allied warlord Sun Quan to beat the Baozi out of Cao Cao's army. After this decisive victory, he returned to central China with Liu Bei, who started expanding his rule across the southwest with the final goal of reviving the crumbling Han dynasty and restoring it to its former glory. For the next few years, he spent more time handling administrative things of the new kingdom, while Liu Bei went off conquering new lands, building up his forces to bring down Cao Cao once and for all. But just as Lando Calrissian betrayed the rebel alliance to protect Cloud City, Sun Quan soon turned on Liu Bei for the sake of his own territory, especially with the threat of Cao Cao still out there. Suddenly, the empire of Cao versus the rebel Liu Sun alliance became the Three Kingdoms in around 220 AD. Except, Cao Cao soon died. Good news, right? Not really. Cao Cao's son officially overthrew the Han dynasty, meaning there wasn't much left for Kongming and Liu Bei to revive. Kongming told his best friend to protest this act of treason by declaring his kingdom to be the legitimate continuation of the Han dynasty and become its rightful emperor as a relative of the royal family. And as emperor, the first thing Liu Bei did was go off to attack Sun Quan for betraying their team-up. But he failed. He was forced to run away, and legend has it that the only reason he got away was because of a magical trap. Magic? Yep, I bet you know where this is going. Apparently, a long time ago, Kongming foresaw that something like this would happen and built up a weird arrangement of piled up rocks at a clearing. And Liu Bei just so happened to lead his pursuers through it. The moment his enemies got into this rock formation, they were hit by a massive dust storm and couldn't get out in all of the haze and the noise. This very curious creation was called the Ba Zhen Tu, or 8 formation scheme, because it was inspired by the 8 trigrams, or Ba Gua, and it's more popularly known as the Stone Sentinel Maze. Sounds pretty wild, right? Unfortunately, there's no definitive evidence that this ever happened. But it was mentioned by other great writers long before the Ming Dynasty novel. So, who knows? Maybe this clearing was just prone to dust storms and bad visibility, and people would get lost because of all the piles of rocks that were so similar. There would be no reliable point of reference to get themselves out, right? Maybe. Anyway, true or not, Liu Bei made it back in one piece, but he didn't last long. In the year 223, he fell sick and died, but not before making his oldest son the new emperor. He told Kongming to help the kid as much as he could, vaguely said that if the kid was an idiot, Kongming was free to do whatever was necessary. But what did he mean by that? Some say it was giving Kongming the power to replace the kid with one of Liu Bei's other sons. Some say it was a free pass for Kongming to make himself emperor if needed. Some cynics say it was a test of loyalty, and if Kongming agreed to take the throne, Liu Bei would have had him literally fired. But the world would never know, because Kongming shook his head and promised to be loyal forever to the throne no matter what. Either way, this was a final piece of factual proof of both Liu Bei's faith and trust in Kongming and Kongming's unwavering loyalty to his lord and his friend. Afterwards, Kongming had to navigate both military and political affairs as Chancellor of the kingdom, trying his best to continue fighting for Liu Bei's dream of rebuilding the Han as a fair and just empire. How hard did he try? Well, there's a story that illustrates just how vast Kongming's vision and magnanimity was. When Liu Bei died, some tribes took the opportunity to rebel against the kingdom. But Kongming was not about to let them destroy all that he and Liu Bei had built. But he was smart about it. He would much rather earn their loyalty and have them rejoin his side than destroy them for dissenting. He defeated and captured the rebel leader, Meng Huo, but didn't even do so much as to punish the guy. Instead, Kongming showed him around, forgave him, and let him go. Thinking he knew how to win, Meng Huo came back and attacked again. Not surprisingly, Kongming defeated him again, and captured him again, and released him again. This happened again, and again, and again, until he was captured for the 7th time, and finally realized there was no way he could beat Kongming, and that there was no need to rebel against such a nice guy. Crazy as it sounds, this story is actually recorded in the official history, though a lot of people question how much of it is true. But it really goes to show how Kongming wasn't just a master of military tactics, but also mind games. And his mind games really shine in his battles against the Cao regime. After Liu Bei's death, he was able to ally with Sun Quan again and began a massive assault on the north in 228 AD. This took the Caos by surprise, and one of their ministers claimed that he could convince Kongming to surrender with nothing more than a debate. I've been talking for long enough, so I hereby present the first and perhaps only epic rap battle of history.
二臣贼子，你枉活其身有六，一身卫理寸功，只会摇唇鼓舌，助曹为虐。一条断脊之犬，还敢在我军阵前殷殷狂吠！我从未见过有如此厚颜无耻之人。你。
Talk about a diss track. Except, this one is something that the novel, again, completely made up. The guy did send a letter telling Kongming to surrender, but he was totally ignored, and that was that. But man, it's a pretty good story. This next one, though, is absolutely legendary. Unfortunately, some bad things happened on that northern invasion that were outside of even Kongming's control. And during his retreat, he was stuck in a city with no more than 10,000 soldiers with him. The Cao forces were bearing down on them with almost 200,000 strong, led by the similarly smart but much more cunning strategist Sima Yi, who was actually kind of a match for Kongming. So how would he wriggle his way out of this pickle? With a couple of brooms and his guqin. See, Kongming was famous for being an extremely careful tactician who rarely took risks. Sima Yi marched up to the city, only to find the gates wide open, a couple of dudes sweeping outside, and most shockingly, Kongming sitting at the top of the city walls playing his freaking harp thing. Talk about a psyop. Sima Yi was shook. He was positive Kongming had some crazy ambush up his sleeve, and he wasn't gonna walk into that. And so, Sima Yi took his 200,000 men, turned around, and left without firing a single shot. Hot dang, that's freaking ridiculous. Because it was. There's been a lot of debate over whether this actually happened, and all signs sadly seem to point to no. Sima Yi wasn't even in the area in the first place. But man, it's such a great story, I don't think anyone really cares, right? And that's probably why Kongming's legacy is so awesome. Nobody really cares whether his stories are true or not, because he was honestly an incredibly good and incredibly clever guy, pitted against a backdrop of bloodshed and backstabbing. The dude is worth the hype. Magic fortune-telling, storm-summoning genius or not. After that, Kongming kept chipping away at the Cao kingdom and would continue being a thorn in their side until he died of illness in 234. Without a Jedi to defend and uphold Liu Bei's vision of a revived Han dynasty, the Cao Empire really did strike back, and nobody could stop them. And after Liu Bei's kingdom fell, Sima Yi was able to devise a long con against the ruling Caos, which allowed his grandson to eventually overthrow them, conquer all of China, and establish the Jin dynasty. But clearly, winning isn't everything, because we're not here for those guys. We're all here for Kongming. Even though he lost, and even though his grand plan failed, we're here because what truly stands the test of time is a good heart, a great mind, and some really awesome stories. Because, regardless if they're true or not, it's these stories that expand our imagination, inspire our dreams, and keep our world colorful, beautiful, and hopeful. That's why of all the Three Kingdoms personalities, he's the one with the most myths, the most legends, and the most spin-offs. So let's let these stories of good old Kongming inspire us to dream bigger than we do and be better than we are. Speaking of stories, if you want to hear more ancient tales from around the world, I've started a new channel called Jared Tells Tales. Story time, but for grown-ups. Maybe I'll see you there. But for now, keep your dreams alive, and until next time, 再见!